Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So Harlan has asked me, he pointed out the repetition that goes on. And of course, it starts off this whole section, to do with the Mishkan, starts off with God telling Moses up on Mount Sinai what he wants. And last week, when we started with the Vayakhel, Moses actually is gathering. So I want to go back so you can see I'm scrolling back to the beginning of Vayakhel to see if we can actually look at how many times. And the fact is that there's a slight difference because what it is it's a detailing and outlining of the process by which the Mishkan was actually constructed. So, so Moses now, right at the beginning of Vayakhel, he has the instructions with him. Here's the beginning of Vayakhel. So at Vayakhel, we now have Moses has only gotten it from God, right? That's the only place. At this stage, he is gathering Vayakhel. He's gathering the Israelites, right? Kol Hadat B'nai Israel, and he is delivering these instructions to them. Okay. Interestingly enough, he starts off with detailing regarding the Shabbat, the law of Shabbat, and then he goes into the actual instructions. It says here, right? So he says, "Kulachem me'etchem truma." This is just so he's telling them this is what God told him. They should take a free will offering, and then he gives the exact, items that they need to bring, the actual components. That is the base materials that need to be made. And then he describes to them the Mishkan itself. This is describing the various parts of the Mishkan. This is all stage two, right? Goes through all of them, all the details. Okay, all this. Let's see we're here. Right. So okay. So now here, right? This on Shani, this is the third stage. This is where they actually do it. So God told Moses, Moses related the instructions to the people, and now the people are going to go and get the stuff. So that's stage three, right? And there it is, Melechet Oil Moed, right? All the things. And it talks about the men talking to the women, bringing from the women, etc. All the various different pieces, component parts, right? uh, and the silver, the copper, etc. Is all mentioning these things, right? The actual where they went and collected all these different parts to assemble the Mishkan, right? All this is continuing here. So there it is. So that's stage three, right? Now, this is four. Where Moses says, look, God has called on Bezalel, right? This is four, Ben Uri, etc., and telling him that Bezalel is going to be in charge of the actual construction itself, right? Gives him understanding to the various skills necessary to make the Mishkan, right? Telling him all the different things. So stage four, right? Okay. So that's stage four. Number five, stage five, Bezalel actually makes. So I saying fourth, but I should change this to the fifth iteration. Okay. Um, let's see. Right. So there he tells, I'm looking, right? Eliav, this is all of them. Right. So here, where they gather the materials, right? And all the people who are working with them is actually going together and doing this, right? And at the end, at this piece, they say, they've brought more than they need for the work. So this is stage five, right? Okay. There. So this is where they end, right? So this is actually the sixth, though I say fifth. I'm going to call it the sixth, right? Right. And this is where so here they're organizing themselves in the fifth, and I'm going to change this, I think. Let's talk about this organization. Let's do this. Gathering the more materials. Let's see. So sixth, right? The construction, right? So here they are actually constructing the curtains, right, etc., etc. Right, exactly what's going on, being told they were doing, and we want to mention it specifically because they were doing exactly what they've been told to do. That's important, right? All in here, right? All this detailing what they actually did, right, etc., etc. Okay, this is simply continuing the boards, continuing of the construction of it, right? The various parts, right? Specifically that they did everything that God had told them to do. That is significant, right? All this, okay? And the ark. So this section here, this lengthy section in Vayakhel deals with all of this, right? This is all now repeating all the specific things that God had told Moses to do. Here they are doing all of them, right? And there are a few extra little details possibly that aren't mentioned to begin with as these things are being done. Okay, there we go. Right. And this is the menorah. So this very lengthy section, right, has to do with them actually constructing the Mishkan, right? This is good. Continuing. It's all the construction of the Mishkan, right? Okay. This is the altar, all of it. So various parts of it, all the things. Okay. So this lengthy, I think this was the sixth section we said, right? Was all the actual construction of the Mishkan. This is
Rabbi,
yes.
um, that they also said about the money, how much the gold
Yeah, that's
would
coming.
cost.
Coming. You're Harlan, you're doing what you do, which is you're anticipating, right? So
Oh,
this is all the actual construction. Now, this is seventh, right? This is the seventh thing. Let's put it in. I'm going to mark it, right? The
mhm.
seventh iteration. Okay. The amounts.
Yeah, shekels, so many shekels.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Of the gold and silver, gold,
I
silver.
think they were doing that because they were afraid some of the Israelites might steal the gold.
I don't know. If Rashi doesn't say it, I don't, I'm not going to assume it. Okay. So let's see. I think that's what that is. Okay. So this is it, the seventh iteration, right? Here it is, just going through this, okay? And then it's talking about the all this here. This is where the actual amounts are here, right? It says the gold that was offered was let's see, 29 talents, 730 shekels.
What's a talent?
You know that I have to figure it out whether it's 1,000, maybe it's 1,000 shekels. Let's try and
Oh,
figure it out. It's either yeah. Here we go. Here's what I wrote. Yeah. So right, 3,000 shekels. A
wow.
talent is 3,000. Well, let's see. Yeah, that's a kikar anyway. Yeah, talent. There it is. 3,000.
Ooh,
Wrote it down. Okay. All right. So well, gold is heavy. We know this. This is all the amounts here, right? Okay, here, all of it. This is the brass that was brought, all being listed here. Okay, right. And
mm.
this is and now here it talks about the clothing. Let's see, Big Day Sarad. These were the service, like the tarps that they had to make when they were carrying it around. And here they're talking about Aaron's dress. Okay, and here they mention the dress itself, right? And then it talks about flattening the plates to make the of gold to make the gold threads, etc. They go into the detail. Aaron's clothing here, all part of the fabrication, right, etc. Okay, this is all this area here has to do with the clothes of Aaron. All of this, which is a repetition again of what we read in Parshat Tetzaveh. Okay, here we go. This all here, all the breastplate, etc., etc. Okay, that's all dealing with the clothing, okay? This lengthy section has to do with Aaron's garments, right? All of this is dealing with it. And now here it says the end, all Vatechel kol avodat mishkan ohel moed, and the work involved in creating the tent of meeting, all its work was concluded, right? And that the children of Israel did all that God had commanded them that they did. So that's why we went into that detail. Okay. So now we have all the parts of the Mishkan made and the clothing, Aaron's clothing, and it looks like we could say eighth iteration. Okay, let's go here. And hold on a second, let's put this a little bit over here. And this is the actual construction. The actual construction. We haven't gotten to this yet. Okay. So there we go. So you see that you could say it's a repetition, but it isn't. It is breaking down, it's deconstructing all the different elements that went into making the Mishkan from every aspect that they could think of. Okay. So we have actually done this. Forgive me. We have done this. Look, we've done all this, the actual construction here, etc. Let's see here. Right. Okay. Okay. And now here, this is so we're on to 9 here, I believe. Okay. Okay. The time, let's see, but you have to, here we go, it says takim, they have to erect, they have to actually put together. So this is the 9th, right? Am I right? Iteration.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go here. Let's just get rid of this. Okay, give me a second here. Okay. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this again. Sometimes my computer does these interesting.
Rabbi, it talks about the priests doing the Ola, the
Give us
burning
a
of.
second. Yeah, no, later. Wait 1 second. I need to do one at a time. I can't do 2 things at once.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's see. So this is God instructs, this is what it is. Moses when to erect the tabernacle, the Mishkan. Okay, that's here, right? The first day of the month, first month, right, etc. Okay, and he's saying how it is, and and how it's to be put together, the order. Okay, there it is. All the stuff here that's telling him all the things it has to do. Keep going. Let me just keep going. And the anointing of the Mishkan, right? So I don't think this would be the 10th iteration, but I think that's all part of the process of putting the Mishkan together, right? Anointing these things. Okay, now we have number 10, right? Moses actually doing it. Moses performs the divine command. It's here. Okay, so here we go, right there. This is all the various things of us actually doing what they're doing, what he was told to do, right? All of it. That's it. So they're actually 10 times. That's it. That is it in the process of doing all of this. Okay.
So,
We had a question.
yeah, how are you defining iteration? I'm sorry I was late, but I'm just
I'm
curious.
saying that what we're saying is the first iteration is God telling Moses to create a Mishkan. The second iteration is where Moses tells the Israelites about, the instructions he's received from God. The third iteration is where they collect the various parts of the Mishkan. The
Right,
fourth,
but how are you defining iteration? Iteration usually means a repeating of something, right?
yes, well,
Or
that's right. It is.
so
It's because
what do
on one level it is repeating because there is a lot of repetition involved, where it mentions exactly the same things again, but there's a different something that's happening in the process of these various, in the same thing. So is that, if I'm not answering your question, follow up, David.
No, so yeah, I was just right. I was trying to understand how the demarcation that you're making of what an iteration is, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you know? So that's what I was trying to understand. How do you know when one section ended and a new iteration began?
So
You
I
know,
actually marked it in the text,
yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
So, so this one starts off with, it says it was, okay, that in the first month, on the first day of the month, this is what Moses was told to do, right? The Mishkan was erected. Okay, so that's the final stage, okay? The previous one, the ninth one, was where God, let me go back and find that. It's quite lengthy, where God is, okay, there, oops, 1 second. Here's the eighth. Hold on a
But
second. So I skipped the ninth somewhere. Sorry, David. Yes, here it is. Here it is. Right there. It says, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying,
so these almost sound like instead of iterations, they're almost like steps. They're
okay,
the
yes, yes,
yeah.
they are. They
That's
are.
why I'm confused when
Okay.
you call them an iteration.
Okay,
Normally,
so I'm not using iteration. Okay, and if I'm not, I can change iteration to step. I'm happy to do it.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. I was just trying to understand the context of
Yes.
what you're describing. It sounds like we've broken it down into sections,
Right,
right? And you're
right,
saying 10 sections that are associated with this, and here they are. And okay,
right.
thank.
I think that if I can get away with using the term iteration, okay, is in the sense that iteration didn't necessarily mean repetition word for word. And if iteration means repetition in word for word, then I'm not using it right. But the thing that jumps out to most people, okay, is the fact that it's repetitious, that it appears repetitious. And so I wanted to I wanted to apply that concept, accept the fact that in some senses it is repetitious, but in another sense, it's not repetitious, but it's depending on your point of view, I suppose, a subtle distinction between the initial instruction by God, then the instruction by Moses to the Jewish people relating to the Jewish people, and then the third thing, the Jewish people going and collecting, starting to perform the commandment, which takes several stages. The actual performance of the commandment involves several different little pieces to it.
Right. And I guess my point is, an iteration doesn't mean that you're doing the exact same thing over and over, word for word, but it does mean that you're doing the same process and making, let's say, minor changes to it in order to improve it. Right. To me, that's what an iteration is, or part of, or the characteristics of it. In this case, it sounds like more like we're talking about sections or stages that have some level of repetition in them, but
Yeah.
they're building upon each other. An iteration doesn't necessarily doesn't move
Okay.
forward, right? You
Okay.
stay in it. It's a loop, right? That's how I think of an iteration, as a loop. You're staying
Uh-huh.
until you've gotten what you wanted, and then you come out of it. And here it sounds like we're doing it's semantics. The only
No,
reason,
semantics are important.
yeah.
Semantics are
Well,
very important. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyway, so this is almost sounding like we have stages here, right? You've
Yes,
defined
I
what
agree. I agree.
10.
Yes.
Anyway, okay. So thank you for clarifying, and now I understand what. And you're right. I mean, stages certainly can have repetition inside of them, right? That they're absolutely so, because when you're going from one stage to the next,
Yes.
sometimes you have to go back to the previous stage in order to move forward, right? So by definition, they have that element of potentially a repetition in them. So I don't know. So
No,
anyway,
listen, I find this very helpful, and I'm happy to change iteration to stage. I
yeah,
like that. It's probably clearer, okay? So
yeah.
what we'll do is I don't need to do this on your
No,
time,
no, no, don't do anything
uh,
now.
but
I,
I would I honestly I think that you're right, and I think it's helpful. And I was just using a fancy word where the word stage would have been perfectly fine. You know, I think what I was using that term iteration because it does sound so repetitious. You follow
yeah,
me?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and in some cases, I mean, it's almost word for word what it was to begin with, except now they're doing it. You follow me? And I think so. Whereas stage, I didn't feel took that into account quite the same way. So
either,
I
either
don't. Yeah, go ahead.
either one works. It's just a matter of what what context,
Yeah,
what's the context of it. When
right.
you said iteration, I was I was puzzled because it didn't sound like this was an iteration in the in the sense that I work with
Right.
on on a daily basis. So
Right.
anyway,
Right,
so
right. No, I understand. Right. In some ways, and maybe I shouldn't be taking the time for this, but I know when we've tried to put together, say, something that has to go to press, and you put it together, and then you look at it, and there's a mistake here, and there's a mistake here, and there's something there, and you change it, and that's the second time you have to redo it,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
then you look at it again, and then there's something you left out. There was a comma you needed that you didn't do. Okay, so you have to do a third time to. I've gone
yeah,
through this, believe me, right? That's
yeah,
and that isn't what we're talking about here. We
yeah,
are definitely talking about stages
yeah.
because it's and in some ways it's sort of so interesting because it's a very practical, tutor, as it were, to what it takes to construct something, right? From the idea to begin with, then the creation of the blueprints, then you know what I mean? There's so much that goes into it when you start to deconstruct it. And as I've said before, I came to realize that knowledge involves deconstruction. The more you can deconstruct anything, any phenomena, any process, anything, the better you know it. And that's what we're doing. And we want to really, it's a way of in a literary style, right? This is literary, in a literary way, really sense how important and how crucial it was that God, that the creator of the universe, have a connecting point with the universe itself, an unusual level of connection.
So that brings me to kind of my second question, which is, that there's always a deeper meaning, right, behind what's happening on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
right. So now we have the 10 stages, right, or 10 iterations,
yeah,
whatever we call them.
right,
So
right,
the question I have there is now, what's the deeper meaning behind having this in the Torah? Is it that God wanted to just instill the notion of being able for human beings to create and follow instructions that maybe doesn't seem deep enough, or is there some deeper, I understand the deconstruction part, but it seems to me that is there some deeper meaning as to why this is here, right? Because it
yes.
usually is. And yeah, I was just trying to understand what that was. And then the one more follow-on question is, if this part of this is to teach us how to like follow instructions or put things together, how come we can't build this today, right? It's forbidden, right, to put the whole thing together except for a model. So anyway, those are my two questions.
Okay. So let me see if I can hold on to both questions and do the best I can
Sure.
to answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, while each element of these things can have a deeper sense, and without any question, the clothing of the high priest was there to delineate the need for atonement for various and different specific kinds of sins that a person might commit. The issue, look, what is the ultimate goal of all of this? The ultimate goal of this is to unify the creator with his creation,
Mm.
to be able to, because we are living now in a world which is so distant from its origins, its spiritual origins, and we're seeing the results of that kind of behavior. There is a wonderful statement in Pirkei Avot that says, "Know three things, and you will never fall into sin." a seeing eye, a hearing ear, and everything written in a book. So know that everything you do is being observed. Everything you say is being heard, and everything that you've done and said is being recorded. You are creating a record of your life, and to know that you are going to have to give an account for that, to understand that the purpose of life, that you were given your life, not to simply have a good time, not to simply recreate, okay? Not simply to have fun. That's a very low level of existence. But in fact, to bring this world through your behavior a little closer to its divine creator. And this particular building, whatever you want to call it, right, was designed to do that. And as I said, I discovered from reading the Malbim, okay, that it is actually a blueprint for human behavior. That, you know, we tend to belittle mitzvot such as kashrut and Shabbat, okay? And yet they are there to sanctify us. And part of that is there's a recognition, not just within Judaism, not just within religion, that the only way you can really build your life is through discipline. You have to exercise. Otherwise, you melt into nothing. And to exercise self-control, to recognize that if you allow your appetites to control your life, you are a slave. And the idea of true liberation through the ability to learn, to discover these commandments, to do everything you can to apply them in a realistic manner to your life, because it's not black and white, it isn't turning on a light switch, but to recognize that you, as a human being, are a point of light, of the divine light into this world. That every
So,
person,
yeah, go ahead.
okay, no, make sure I'm answering your question.
Yeah. So based on that, you are. So based on that, then could you also say that the 10 stages are really, what the stages of our lives in terms of building them, because building this was building, you mentioned this before,
Yeah,
that's effectively a model of the human body, right? To some extent.
exactly. Yeah, no, it is.
So can we also extrapolate that point that these stages are really meant to talk about the stages of human development from a spiritual perspective, or is that stretching it?
But no, okay. So while I cannot delineate specifically one from the other, I can in a general kind of way. It starts off, it says that the study of Torah is equal to all the other mitzvot. Well, the study of Torah is that stage where God gives Moses the instructions to build the tabernacle.
Yep.
So the very first stage is gaining knowledge. And that in a sense, I think the point that you're taking now is probably true. And maybe if I had more knowledge and more understanding, I could delineate it in the way I just did for the first stage. But one could say the second stage, of course, is to then try and put it into your actual context, right? Into the living context that you have. Right, that's the second stage where Moses is telling the Israelites about it, about what they need to do. But you have to do it. What I learned myself, okay, was that we live in a real context, and not everybody buys into what I shared with you. Um, and people, for various reasons, resist things. Okay. So the question then becomes, how do you do things in such a way where people aren't feeling judged, where people aren't feeling less of human beings because you're so holy and all? You don't want to come across that way. It's obnoxious. So that's another stage in terms of gaining wisdom as to how you want to try and do this. So there's definitely a process by which one tries to achieve this. And, you have a lifetime in which to try and do this. And nobody's saying you're going to get to the end of the process. What really matters in the end is, what direction are you going? What vector do you have? In other words, are you going in the right direction? Or are you going in the direction of selfishness, of cheating people, of being dishonest with yourself, etc.? Right? So, you know, the ability to introspect is terribly important. And the ability to accept criticism is terribly important. The ability to, in any adversarial situation, to say, what am I doing? What am I doing to make this an adversarial situation? I mean, these are all parts of trying to develop, you know, and gain wisdom in the process of bringing God a little bit closer to this world. And we do it through our lives, and we do it through how we treat other people, and how do we treat them with respect, and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I love what you suggested, that these various stages maybe could be linked up to the stage will bring God into the world.
Yep. No. Well, thank you for the the insights, which are, I mean, extremely valuable, and also they do make a lot of sense. And I really appreciate the thought that it's the vector that we're heading on, not necessarily the end result, because that is the way we usually look at things. Is you don't always get to the end result. Maybe never get to the end result, depending on what you're doing. But it's always a question of, are you moving in the right direction, right? And you brought, that's a profound way to look at it from that point of view, because that takes the judgmental part out of it, right? Because we judge something because as a finished product always. And if we look at things as a vector, then we don't necessarily judge so much the finished product. We judge where something's heading, which is a much more powerful. Yeah. So thank you. I'll stop babbling now. Thank you.
I'm glad that works. So Harlan, we'll have to take your question another time, but it was on a different subject anyway, in a sense. So, by the way, the Exodus ends with this. Leviticus then starts talking about the actual usage of the tabernacle. So that's basically what Leviticus deals with. So it makes sense. Okay, I think that is it for today, and I'm going to stop the recording.